make the remarks for which he's obligated. So we're going to have to tackle the Constitution. The administrative structure has been a bothersome issue, even as expressed by my predecessors, Mr. Christopher Thomas and Mr. Nizam Mohammed. And as the relatively new chairman, I want to express my appreciation for the work that they have undertaken in what I now see and realize as difficult circumstances. You would have heard or read about the difficulties we face in this very location as another example of the limited powers that the Police Service Commission has. This building has, as inspected and revealed by OSHA, several hazards, both in terms of health and safety, and there is deliberate movement in getting that remedied now. But if the location and the acquisition of a building were put under the jurisdiction of the Police Service Commission, this matter would have been healed a year or two ago. But the administrative structure, and that is why Madam Minister here is so enthusiastic about public service reform. We are having a modern society, a technologically driven society, but a very archaic public service configuration. We need to move the evolution of that reform more rapidly because it affects us as well as a so-called independent body.
So the issue.
Yes. It's coming up?
Yes. It's here right now.
Sorry,
Sit down.
Mr. Howard.
One of the busiest portfolios, and I was in Parliament so I could attest to that, one of the busiest portfolios is that of Attorney General. I'm sure he would tell me he had about 2 other functions this morning to attend and also to speak. And perhaps the second busiest is the one on my left? No. Because everything comes to her, all the needs, all the shortcomings, all the public service requirements come through Madam Minister's jurisdiction. Am I right, or am I giving you too much of a...
Yes, a lot of the requirements of the public
Yeah, it's a
service.
double service. And
And
these
especially
days,
public service reform.
I know. These days, public service is not like long ago, where you were quiet and you were away from the media scrutiny. Every footstep you make, you have to give some accountability, and I think that means of the heightened democracy that we now have before us. I want to welcome the Honorable Attorney General. I think your presence is very vital to bringing life to this movement. And I was remarking just now that you represent the Prime Minister here, and you are the conduit from what we do, the Prime Minister. And I want to put on the record once again, I've said so earlier on, but I need to say it in your presence. The support that you have been given, what we intend to do, is remarkable in my experience. Not only given the support, but the expeditious manner in which you respond. I think that is very, very helpful and inspiring. We expect from the review team a draft report within 2 months, after which comments, suggestions will be made to be forwarded to the Prime Minister for final consideration, and then it will be returned to the Police Service Commission for submission to the President to follow the protocol, who will then submit it to the Prime Minister as the final document, who together, of course, with the Attorney General and Cabinet, will decide the extent to which they want to put it to the Parliament for the reforms that we speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take the opportunity now in my final remark, and I have spoken, but I think unexpectedly, extensively, because I wanted to fill the gap whilst our 2 ministers arrived. So I was going on and on and on, and I'm sure I would bore them. So you will relieve them from some of that boredom when you and also invite Madam Minister, since she's here to say a few words. The Attorney General or his representative, who is Ms. Candice Ramprasad, the Minister of National Security or his representatives, that's Ms. Michelle Otley and Mr. Keith Reno is here, Director of Law Enforcement at the Ministry. The Minister of Public Administration, or her representative, who is here, Ms. Gillian McIntyre. The Chairman of the Police Service Commission, who is I? Who is I? It's not who is me. Who is me sounds better, but it's who is I, the correct thing. Eh? The Chairman of the Law Reform Commission, who is represented here by Marissa Jogi. Mr. Samraj Haripal has been very helpful, but this morning he has a very impressive and very important appointment. But he is here as a substantive representative. Then the Parliamentary Council, the Ministry of the Attorney General, Mr. Ian McIntyre, and the President of the Police Service Association, Mr. Anand Ramisa. Anand, thank you for coming, Mr. McIntyre. Thank you for coming. And the legal representative from the Police Service, Mr. Gobin Hariprasad. Right. And then Mr. Alvin L. Daniel, who has been a former chairman of the Statutory Services Authority Commission and other things in the human resource area. And I thought with the Attorney General's consent, we have invited him to represent the human resource component of this review team. As I told you, I've been asked to be chairman. We've also asked Ms. Donna Cox, Member of Parliament, representing the opposition leader, to be part of the review team, and I've explained why we need that bipartisan spirit from the beginning to bring added value to the eventual mission. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard me a few minutes. I will now ask the Attorney General to make some remarks for us that will help us along the way. Attorney General, sir, thank you very much once again for coming.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the Police Service Commission, members of the Police Service Commission, Honorable Minister, Honorable Member of Parliament, President of the Association, and other distinguished persons in this room. Today's meeting is a very important one. Trinidad and Tobago has arrived at a very critical juncture in the police service reform, which was widely acknowledged in the Parliament when we last debated the issue of the appointment of a commissioner and deputy commissioners of police. During the course of that debate, both the opposition and the government, in fact, expressed a common desire to have some reform of the process by which appointments, promotions, and in fact, the disciplinary procedures take place in the police service. Of particular significance is the process that leads to the appointment of the commissioner and deputy commissioners of police. The attempted reform that is currently in place is one that has not served well. It was costly, it was time-consuming, and it was one that did not, in many people's view, accord with the social realities of Trinidad and Tobago. It is my hope that this reform process that is undertaken under your distinguished leadership, sir, will in fact lead to meaningful reform consistent with the wishes of the elected representatives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, so that we can have a more involved approach, if not a more indigenous approach, to the question of selection at the very highest levels and indeed in all levels of the police service. The question of promotion and discipline in the police service strikes at the very root of the administration of criminal justice in this country. A demotivated police service is one that leads to a weak link in the chain of justice. And one of the main grievances and one of the main sources of demotivation for police officers has in fact been the system of promotion and the procedure for discipline in the police service. In the 15 years I spent in the legal profession, I probably represented more police officers than the average practitioner in terms of matters dealing with promotion, or rather lack thereof. And the kinks in the system that revealed themselves, I hope will not be repeated and we can solve them. The first thing had to do with the preparation of an officer's staff report. When I joined the legal profession, there was no right to see a staff report, but there was a right to have a staff report prepared in the public service. The right to have a staff report prepared by law without the corresponding benefit of being able to see that staff report as a matter of right meant two things. A, that you did not know what was written on that staff report about you, but perhaps more importantly, B, that you had no way of verifying whether the staff report was in fact prepared at all. In many cases I did, the staff reports were either not prepared or things adverse to the officer were written on his staff report behind his back, never disclosed to him, and were being disclosed to him for the first time during the court proceedings. The need for transparency, therefore, in the preparation of staff reports is vital to the promotion process in the police service. The need for the injection of transparency in the promotion process in the police service as a whole is one that is sadly lacking. And although we've had some measure of reform, I dare say there is still need for further steps and progress to be made. Only yesterday I was speaking with a police officer who had not been promoted, and I couldn't understand why, because it was an officer who I had the pleasure of observing in more than one court case, and who had received several commendations from judges and magistrates about their exemplary conduct. And he indicated the reason he wasn't promoted was because the senior superintendent or the sergeant who was in charge of his division indicated to him that, look, as far as he's concerned, as a matter of personal philosophy, no one is perfect, and therefore he was not giving any officer an outstanding tick. So officers were immediately relegated to either satisfactory, good, or very good, but nobody got outstanding from that officer because of his own personal philosophy. Nobody's perfect, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that in the division next door, you didn't have a superintendent or a sergeant who subscribed to that kind of personal view, and he was quite happy to give outstanding to many officers. In consequence of which, what you had was that officers from one division who may have had a worse record got promoted because the point system was such that they got higher points because they got outstanding on the staff report. And the officer who got very good or good on the other side, who was an outstanding officer, was not promoted. There is need for a uniformity in approach and some measure of consistency in the evaluation of an assessment of police officers' performance. If that is not done, and the subjective whims and fancies of the assessing officer are not structured in a manner, are not governed by a framework that takes into account these personal idiosyncrasies, the system will fail. And it is not going to lead to the cream rising to the top. The culture of meritocracy is one that is badly needed in the police service. Long gone are the days where we promoted officers hopefully on the basis of seniority, or so we'd like to think. The fact of the matter is there's a need for empirical data and statistics. A change in the law does not mean that there's a change in behavioral patterns. Where are the statistics to inform the dialogue around this table, to tell us how many officers have been promoted? And if we do the graphs, we'll see, was it according to seniority or not? It doesn't mean that a senior officer being promoted wasn't one who was worthy of promotion based on an objective evaluation of his merit and ability and performance. But if the graph shows that a disproportionate number of officers are being promoted who coincidentally happen to be senior, then I think that is a fact you need to have regard to, because the system may not be working in a manner in which the law intended. One of the failures of the legislative process in Trinidad and Tobago is that we pass laws that look good on paper, but there is no monitoring, review, and assessment of the application and implementation of the laws that we do pass, so that the failure comes with the administration of the law. And when that happens, the law remains looking good on paper, but in practice and reality, it doesn't serve the intended purpose. In the police service, that has been the plight of the police service for far too long in this country. And that is something that is going to continue unless we have this kind of forum to evaluate and monitor the implementation of the laws and the regulations that we have passed. The issue of discipline in the police service is also a matter that requires urgent overhaul. We pass laws to try and improve the system of discipline in the police service. We try to reform the procedure. But regardless of what we do, the population is none the wiser in terms of the statistics. How many officers have been charged with disciplinary offenses, and how long has elapsed? Why is it taking so long? And are we aware that officers may be suspended on full pay at the taxpayer's cost? And due to no fault of the officer, the system is one that drags the matter along through a meandering and endless path that leads